So I'll take this up, and very, very warm welcome to all of you. So this is the third of the 4-part series on the world of psychometrics that we had designed and curated specially for all of you. The very first session gave you more of a panoramic view of the world of psychometrics. The second webinar was more of a panel discussion where several masterful coaches actually shared their real world insights into the world of assessments and how they have been using them in real world. Today is a zoom in into the DISC and Harrison so that you can have a window side view of both Harrison and DISC with two of our masterful coaches and speakers here today. Yes, there is a fourth one coming up on the 30th of September, which will be on Hogan and on EQ. So for now, I would like to introduce both the speakers of today. That is Nanditha as well as Nasser. Just a moment, please. So before we get into the introduction, just a little word here. I just wanted to remind you all about the awareness and discovery being the cornerstone of a great coaching journey. And I think tools play a very, very vital role in enabling that discovery. Tools can do only so much. It is the masterful coach and the curious coachee with great chemistry when they come together that creates the masterpiece. That's the discovery that we're looking forward to. So we have with us Nanditha Krishnan, a seasoned facilitator, a mentor, and a coach who has been coaching for the last 18 years in the leadership space. She has a passion for behavioral, she has a lot of passion for the behavioral work and has coached and mentored several managers and future leaders. She has extensively used various psychometric tools like Harrison and DISC. She uses Appreciative Inquiry. She uses emotional intelligence and transactional analysis as ways to understand and work with the clients. And Nanditha will be talking to us more about Harrison today. The next speaker is Mohammed Nasser, another very incisive and very practical speaker and very pragmatic approach. He's the director of E2E Excite Marketing and Training. He's an executive director, BNI Coimbatore. He's an executive coach, credentialed and on his way to PCC now. He is an expert in Thomas profiling and DISC and a practitioner who holds a master's degree in foreign trade. So over to you, Nanditha, to take us through Harrison.
Thank you, Puneet, and a very warm welcome to everyone. I'm very happy to see all of you here, and thank you for giving us the time. And I'm going to open up Harrison through the way I see it, and kind of talk you through some experiences I've had in the space of coaching and Harrison put together. And without further ado, let me go ahead and share my PowerPoint. And let's get, so all of you are able to see my PowerPoint? Yes?
Yes, Nanditha.
Yeah, I'm not able to see the chat or anything. Okay, thanks, Pradeep. And so let's get into understanding the coach's perspective into the Harrison assessment. And I'm going to go kind of slow. And if you have questions, please put it in the chat window, or I will take pauses at a few moments in the session so that if there are any questions that happen in the here and now at that point of time, you can bring that up. Like Puneet very beautifully brought in the disclaimer, the whole purpose behind me presenting the Harrison today is from a context of having a deeper insight into people's behavior, work style, and how it's impacting them and others. I think it has helped me immensely with my own active and generative listening. It has helped me with my coaching presence to kind of understand where the client is coming from when I'm actually having the Harrison as a support and aid by my side to do this conversation. And some very tricky areas, which you will understand in a little bit from now. How can we unravel that, and how can we take it across with the help of the Harrison will come into the forefront in a little bit from now. And it makes it a lot easier for me to open the discussion with someone who's a lot more inhibited and really does not come from a space of self-awareness and the kind of questions that could get asked, keeping the Harrison as a backdrop and coming from a space of curiosity has helped me immensely in discussing the Harrison with the client. And they can reveal insights that might not come from discussion alone, like I said, in the context of self-awareness. And let me start going in deeper. This is an instrument which was put together by this gentleman. His name is Dr. Dan Harrison. Much more recent instrument just came into being in the 1990s. This gentleman with a doctoral program, and he has multiple degrees that you can see. Mathematics to organizational psychology, which is up there. What is beautiful about Dr. Dan Harrison, and I've had the privilege of seeing him because he did one of my, I did this workshop about 5 years ago, and I was, one part of it was handled by Dr. Dan Harrison, a beautiful human being in that context. And what he has done is something in the context, about 2,500 questions have been all compressed and condensed and crunched into a 25-minute questionnaire. So there is a 25-minute online smart questionnaire, 30 years of research and validation. I also like the instrument because it tells us how authentically the person who has taken the instrument has gone on to taking it, and it tells how accurate it is, right? Starting from a 97 to all the way, how scattered the person was when they were taking the questionnaire. Very easily customized. There are many, many reports, and I'm not going to really talk about a lot of those reports. The ones that I'm going to be talking about today are just two of them, which is the talents report, talents and definition, and the other one is, of course, the paradox report. And I'll tell you in which context of coaching have both of those come into play. 38 plus languages and 61 countries, and a little more about the SMART questionnaire. It is all about stack ranking self-descriptive sentences, and scores are calculated based on the way we rank stack it. It gives us access to a lot of competencies, leadership capabilities, emotional intelligence, behavioral competencies, and core values. And it is very customizable to the organization, that if you're running it for an organization. And this is quite vast, and it measures about 156 traits, and it is up there on the slide, right from motivators to traits, to interests, to values and work preferences, and relationships to job performance, about 30 to 40 factors. All of this is just, you know, the logistics and the overview of it. Harrison is based on two fundamental theories. So I'm going to walk you through theory one and then theory two. Theory one is very simple to understand. It's called the enjoyment performance theory. And all this talks about is up in the diagram there. When I love or enjoy or I'm interested in doing something, I do more of it. I do it again and again. And just like Marshall Goldsmith said, 10,000 hours of practice. When I do more of it, I do it repeatedly. I tend to improve in that because I also get feedback. I get positive strokes. I get a lot of recognition in that space. And I tend to improve that time after again. And then there is a feedback that rolls in as well, saying that, yeah, you know, this is something I should do more of. This is something that so the flip is also possible in the enjoyment performance theory, which is, I really don't like this particular thing that I do, so I don't do enough of it. As a result of it, I don't pick up those skills and I don't improve on those skills. And there is a sense of negativity that sets in about that particular activity or that particular thing that I'm doing. And as a result of which, I don't do it. And both of this in the enjoyment performance theory unfolds in the traits and definition report of the Harrison. And this talks about traits, task preferences, and I know that there are a lot of other psychometric tools which do this. And Harrison does it a little differently, and I will talk with you in a minute about it, right? What are traits that are clearly to avoid? And this report has helped me immensely in career transition conversations. Somebody is looking for a change of career. They don't like what they do. They don't seem to enjoy what they do. They're not getting the needed recognition. They are not really shining in the limelight in that space. What is it that they can explore? And I think this report brings that across very beautifully. And of course, the highest scores are a 9 and a 10. And I want you to right now focus on the numbers which are at the bottom of the slide. Let's assume that you're standing in a very big field. And this instrument is on a 10-point scale. The midpoint is not a 5. The midpoint is a 6. So let's say that you're standing right in the middle of a very big field, a football field or any other field. And numbers 5 and 7, which are flanking the number 6, are like 5 steps away, which means that they're almost as close to a 6, with a very little difference between a 6 and a 5 and a 7. As we move out, 4 and an 8 become 5 feet, 3 and a 9 become a 55 feet, and a 2 and a 10 become a 155 feet. So if you realize it, it is not proportional. It is not a thing that clearly states that it's equally demarcated. It very well states that 9 and 10 are your strongest preferences and their strong behavior needs, and they give you the most satisfaction. And you will find ways to do them regardless of circumstances. Likewise, the ones which are on the lower end are the ones that we dislike, and the ones that we avoid, we procrastinate, we least prefer doing that, right? And why does this become important? And I know I've had questions in the past saying that, Nanditha, I have a 9 and a 10, but I'm not able to explore a career in that space, right? And then it is about figuring out what you can do, and are you in that stage in your Maslow's to say that I'm going to go behind what I love, and when I do that, I get a lot more than just money. But of course, there are many of us who feel that that becomes a very important thing in our purview, and I really can't ignore that. So this instrument throws in these numbers, and this particular report, Traits and Definition, talks about this. I'm going to take a minute pause to see if there are any questions here from the group.
And none, Nanditha, we can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And so that's how we read the scores. And then I pulled out a sample report saying that anything which is a 9.5 plus becomes your highest values, your life themes. And then, of course, the whole scale is out there. And anything which is less than 2.5 are things that I don't prefer. And when you look at the instrument report, and when you see the report, you see that this person's trait of being helpful, warmth, empathy, wants freedom to work and optimism, wants challenges, and the willing to attempt a difficult task or goals is all out there. Every trait has its own definition based on the way Harrison unfolds, right? And what our strengths and focuses are out there. There are many more that you can see out here. And if you look at it, this person has an ability to take risks because the numbers are very high there. And like I told you, that's at 155 feet away from the center point, which is a number 6. And things that I don't prefer not to do, a tolerance of following rules, schedules, procedures. And I remember having done this conversation with this individual, asked me, do I join an organization or do I join a startup? And I think this report helped us immensely to figure out that this person is a lot more comfortable with flexibility, change, all of that, and does not like following rules, schedules, and probably will do quite well in a startup. And I think that person was tipping towards that space and wanted to explore something in that context. And again, there are things in the report which talks about retention. It talks about what motivates individuals, all of that in this traits and definitions report. And task preferences, which task will this person really do well at, and which are the ones that they clearly will have to go ahead and avoid. And this trait and definition report clearly is based on the enjoyment performance theory that we spoke about. And some of the questions in coaching that has helped me is, tell me a little bit about what you do, your responsibilities, and what is it that you enjoy about your role, your job, and what is it that really things that you don't enjoy, and what is it that you would rather not do or hand it over to someone else. And what are some of the challenges that you're currently facing? And you get to hear a lot of things which will put our coaching a lot more into perspective about, how the client wants to approach this and take this in the career transition context. That is the enjoyment performance theory, which is theory 1. Harrison has a very interesting theory, which is called the paradox theory. We have a lot of paradoxes that happen in nature. So a paradox are two statements or beliefs that appear to be contradictory, but nevertheless, both of them are true. They look like there are opposites, but they're quite interdependent and synergistic with respect to one another. And the beautiful part is, having one and not the other is always looked as incomplete in a Harrison assessment, and it can pose potential difficulties in which the client could face potential difficulties. So I'm going to actually probe the group and figure out what are some of the paradoxes that you see in nature. I know one, which is light and darkness. What are the others? Can I have some?
A rose and the thorn.
Yes, a rose and a thorn. What else? What are some of the other paradoxes that appear to you? We have many paradoxes in parenting as well. Is it the carrot? Is it the stick? I'm just kidding, okay? But various paradoxes, right? Dry, wet, light, darkness. There's so many more. Do you see any in the chat window, Puneet?
Yes, quite a few, Nanditha. So
Can you please read it out?
I see inhale and exhale, as Jayan put it. Vijay says tough love. That's interesting. And I'm reminded of a cloud with a silver lining. Anna says tough empathy.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of you bringing in this, and we will bring it into the context of the Harrison report in a bit. Yes, Puneet, any more?
No more, Nanditha.
Okay, fantastic. So I want us to just kind of remember this for a minute as we are going much deeper into the paradox. So remember that a paradox are two statements which look contradictory on the outside, but both of them are true. And they look like opposites, but they're quite interdependent and synergistic on one another. You cannot just have one and not have the other one, because it will pose difficulties and it will be incomplete. And Harrison is the only assessment method that harnesses the power of the paradox. And this is something that I completely love and resonate and enjoyed working in the context of coaching, because very soon your clients will realize that I can't just play to one strength. I will need an interplay of both for it to be a synergistic relationship. And so what does this mean, right? And what does this paradox theory mean? I want you to look at the extreme left of the bipolar scale. A lot of instruments are on a scale of 1 to 10, with frankness on one end and diplomacy on the other end. And things can just traverse and say that as I'm moving towards the left, I'm a lot more frank. As I move towards the right, it's a lot more diplomatic. As I stay in the middle, I'm able to balance both of it. The paradox scales in Harrison are very different, right? It has two scales, one for frank, one for diplomatic. So remember, in music, we kind of tweak those things, those buttons to see the bass and varying other things. I look at the paradox scales that way, right? Frank and diplomacy on the high ends is considered a poor communicator. Both of them on the lower end is, both of them high is considered a great and a good communicator. Both of them on the lower end and one of them high, the other one low, all of them are considered as poor communicators. And both of them appear on the same scale. And I think for me, this had a huge meaning when I actually went ahead and delivered a lot of my coaching work. And in Harrison, the paradox is a relationship between the two categories of traits. There is a dynamic trait and there is a gentle trait. The dynamic is a lot more visible in terms of behaviors. The gentle, as the name suggests, is a lot more subdued and a lot more, unexpressed at times. There are 12 pairs of paradoxical traits, and that appears on an XY graph, and everything is about the relationship between what happens on the X and what happens on the Y. On the X is the gentle trait, on the Y is the dynamic trait. And this can have a lot of revelations about behavior and is very predictive in its own way. So let's look at what are the 12 paradoxes that Harrison takes care of and looks at in this instrument. Certain to open reflective, there's analytical to intuitive, and there are a lot more, and we will talk about many of them in a lot more detail. So I just want to give you a minute to read this, and then we move in. And if you look at it, they all look like paradoxes, and they are, right? And I'm going to work with one of it, which is frank and diplomatic, which is in the space of interpersonal. And in the interest of time, I'm moving in, and Harrison has gone ahead and put out 12 graphs in the paradoxes report under 3 pillars: the interpersonal pillar, the achievement, and the leadership pillar. And you'll see each one of them flowing very nicely into the other one at times. They also have a space and a place of their own as well. And that's where the paradox pillars stand. And like I said a little while ago, both of them need to be high, which is called balanced versatility. And that's a good communicator. When both of them are low, there is deficiency, but it's balanced. So it's called a balanced deficiency. When the dynamic trait is much higher than the gentle trait, it becomes an aggressive imbalance. And the flip of that, right? When the gentle is a lot higher than the dynamic trait, it becomes a passive imbalance. Or this is the vocabulary or the nomenclature that's put out in the paradox report. And this is just the way it would appear on the report: the gentle trait on the x-axis, the dynamic trait on the y-axis. Low on both is balanced deficiency, high on gentle is passive imbalance, high on the dynamic is aggressive imbalance. And of course, Balanced versatility is where both of them beautifully coexist, and there is a complete synergy and love for both of the dynamic and the gentle traits. Going back to frank and diplomatic, right? A poor communicator on the low end of the top left graph, neither frank nor diplomatic. When I overdo the dynamic trait, which is frank, I come across as blunt. Let's go in the clockwise direction and look at the lower right bottom. When I overdo diplomatic, I come across as evasive, and I'm not frank enough. And of course, the balanced versatility is in the space of where I have a balance of both the worlds. And I'm going to take a minute to just stop so that you are absorbing this. And if you have questions, I will take up a couple of them now. Puneet, any questions? Any questions, please feel free to put it up on the chat window or go on unmute.
Hi, Nanditha. Yeah, there's a question from Rajesh.
Okay.
How does one reconcile the results with self-beliefs?
And I think that's a great question. And I think self-belief, if it is a limiting belief, I think again, through a coaching conversation and your directness in one of our direct communication methods, what are things that you're going to do to go ahead and unravel this for the individual in terms of a self-belief, and ask the person whether how is it serving them and whether it's working for them. And I think for me, the way it has helped me is help them unfold and build awareness around the fact that, you know, it's great to be frank. It is great to be diplomatic. We need to do both of that. You cannot have one in isolation from the other. I do not know, Rajesh, if this answers your question in entirety. We will park it for now because I think there's a much, much deeper, you know, answer that is needed here. And so maybe we want to park this and see whether we have the time to come back to it later on.
Yeah. Right. Thanks, Nanditha. The other request from Yatish is, can you please display the previous slide graph? And Yatish, you can unmute if you want to ask something.
This one?
Yeah, the previous one. Yeah, correct. I think this
Yeah,
is the
no, I was just looking at how this graph is displayed, the gentle on the X and the dynamic on the Y, whereas the fourth quadrant here is the balanced versatility. So I just got a little confused in the placement of the graphs in the next slide. So I just wanted to clarify it, that's all.
So if you look at it, again, balanced versatility is a great communicator, which is the bottom left graph that is out there, Yatish. And and so that's where it is. And
I got it.
In the interest of time, I'm going to move on.
Yeah, thank you, Nanditha. We'll move it, right?
And now I'm going to actually show you different things that can show up on the graphs, right? So in this particular graph, let's assume that the person is very high on frankness, and because of which they come across as blunt. So we are all a particular way in a normal scenario, and then under stress, we can flip. And that is what you're seeing as this whirlwind kind of a thing on the bottom right of the graph. A person who's very blunt, when they are under stress, could quieten down, or they just want to avoid it, or they just say that I'm just going to stay quiet in this. And the way the flip, these are called the flip behaviors, the way the flip emerges and the size of the flip is determined by what is the difference between the scores on the X and the Y axis. So this particular instrument report not only shows us where we are, it also shows us when we are stressed, when things are not working for me the way it is, what happens to me. And usually the flip is on the diagonally opposite side of where I am with respect to my graph. So for a person who's very evasive, and that's their normal style, which is the gentle trait amplified, will move into becoming blunt under stress. And I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, does this happen all the time? And I think that you will come to know only when you probe with the client. Remember, we are telling you that this instrument is just to help you unravel a lot of things with the client. So you can ask them, what happens to you under stress? You're very diplomatic as an individual, and what happens to you when things don't work the way you are? And probably they will tell you something, and then you can see whether it maps back into the graph that is out there. And a person who's low on both, right? And they can flip in either of the directions. A person who's low on diplomacy, or low on frankness, can either become very blunt or can quieten down completely. So this is for a person who appears on the lower left, and the flip behaviors under stress can be either or. And I'm just going to go ahead and take up one in the interest of time. And I need to go ahead and narrate this as an example to you in one of my coachings that I've done, keeping the Harrison in mind. The person comes in to the session quite frustrated, saying that, you know, I always go ahead and listen to others' opinions, and I'm not able to put across my opinion at all. Okay, and then there's a lot of probing that went into the conversation, and there was a Harrison that had also happened. The person was quite low on certainty, which is the dynamic trait on the y-axis, and very open reflective. Open reflective is looking at different viewpoints and incorporating it into my own. The ability to completely abort my idea or my opinion and my lack of confidence in my own opinion. And I'll say, oh, that's a better opinion, let me take it up. And in the long run, it has landed up hurting the client. And then the paradox graph helps this individual to say, yeah, I didn't look at it that way. I need to be able, and the person is a leader, okay? The person is a leader in the organization and comes back and tells me, and this is your question, Rajesh, with respect to self-belief, right? My self-belief is, shouldn't I listen to the opinion of others? Isn't that an important thing for me in doing conversations with my team? Because I want to come across as a leader who's listening to people. I want to come across as a leader who's embracing ideas that people bring to the table and opinions and thoughts, right? All of that is a fair ask. At the same time, you know the scenario, you know the landscape a lot differently than people, and you are actually eliciting a lot of responses, ideas, and thoughts. A great blend of certainty along with open reflective always helps, right? And for us to again work with this individual in the context of self-belief, to ask, how is this serving you? What is happening? What will bring that confidence into you accepting and understanding that your thought process and your opinions play a significant part in some of these discussions, and take it across. So I'm going to stop for a minute to see if there are any questions with respect to this particular slide. And
no, Nanditha. Yeah, you can go ahead.
My request to you, can I know how much time I have so that...
Nanditha, we already passed the time, so maybe...
Okay. Yeah. So I'm just
Sure.
going to take one example here and not do too many examples. There are many more, and we will, if any of you are interested, I can share the PowerPoint as well. Self-acceptance, right? How much do I accept myself? Saying that I'm okay the way I am, or always I'm looking for arenas and things to self-improve. We are not saying that's not good, right? Both of them are needed. I need to say, yeah, I'm good the way I am. I need to add on these few things. And that's why there's healthy self-esteem as the balanced versatility there. where I think I'm God's gift to mankind and I'm okay the way I am, and self-defense, acceptance, which is on the y-axis, the dynamic trait is high, I will come across as defensive. And in the transactional analysis language about I'm okay, you're not okay. Or I become so self-critical, saying that anything is not good enough for me. I need to constantly improve or do a lot of things. Always that quest to figure out what else can I do. And again, that is not a bad thing, right? It is just that you need a balance of both of it. And I remember one coaching session where this person said, I've done so much, I'm never satisfied with what is happening at all, right? And the satisfaction comes because of not having enough self-acceptance. And just that space to say that, yeah, I need to figure out, let me also pull up my y-axis while keeping my x-axis also alive. And that will land me into a healthy self-esteem quadrant. So I'm not going to actually walk you all through any more. There are many more. There are flipped behaviors. I'm sorry, in the interest of time, not able to spend enough around. How does it happen? It analyzes characteristics in the individuals and figure out what are some of the hidden derailers. And again, what kind of conversations can you do with them if it is a self-belief, and go ahead and provide whatever, right? Elicit guidance may not be the right thing in coaching, but to help them build awareness in that space, and stress behaviors as well, and the need to balance both of it. This is pretty much a summary slide. If one of it is strong and the other one is weak, let's figure out how we can develop the weak trait without compromising the strong one, because you need an interplay of both of them for it to be married and be in a great space. And some questions with respect to paradox. In your mind, how will you fulfill your preference for whatever? How does it serve you? Are typical questions, right? What kind of an impact does a lower preference for this have on your job? What are some of the challenges that you encounter, and what implications does this have for you? And that's it. And I think I would like to close with this quote: every truth having two sides, and let's look at both before we commit ourselves to either. And that's pretty much where I am with respect to the Harrison at this point of time. And I know that it was too short a session, but I'm hoping that it's given you a little insight to build that curiosity to figure out how this assessment can throw a lot more light into our coachings that we do. And that's where I am at this point of time. So
Nanditha, we have a couple of minutes for a few questions. And that was a wonderful presentation. I'm just going to read out a few questions from the chat box. Under stress, flip behavior in Harrison in the group. Can you please, Anna, can you kind of unmute and ask if there's something you wanted to make
a point? And while Anna is going on unmute, I just want to let the folks know that the newest kids on the block with respect to Harrison are Vijay and Uday, who are also certified. So if I'm unable to answer, I'm going to request their help to come in, because I'm not done it in about 3 years now, but I've done a lot of Harrison prior to that. So over to you, Anna, for your question.
Great, and you both are very powerful. The enjoyment and performance theory. I am zero because I chose not to do any pre-read and come. So it's beautiful insights. And then the paradox is something really insightful. Yeah. I was just trying to compare that, in MBTI, there is something called in the grip behavior. Is that something closer to the flip behavior in the paradox?
So I don't know the answer to that, Anna. So I'm going to ask whether Vijay or Uday know the answer to Anna's question.
Thank
My
you.
request to the two of them to come in.
This is Uday. I would like Anna to share what is in the grip so that I can understand the MBTI.
In the MBTI, generally you have a preference on one side of the scale.
Right.
And always that's the way you respond. But under extreme pressure, you tend to behave in a manner that is completely going on the other side of the scale. say someone who is not really analytical or who doesn't go into detail, and suddenly under pressure, suddenly they go so much into deep into detail for just for the sake of it, without even, suddenly they feel that, oh, am I being taken for a ride? Let me get into the detail. They go deep and deep and deep, which is not their preference. When they do it, it really becomes, it takes a lot of time for them to realize and then come out of it. So the flip behavior you said in the paradox. So I was trying to correlate whether these two have any common.
Thanks, Anna, for that clarification, and it helps me to relate to Harrison. I pick up the word on stress, deeply stressed, and therefore preferences change. Harrison research lesson that I'm aware and knowledgeable about, the flip behavior happens under conditions of stress. So it would completely move from one end diagonal to the other end of the diagonal. And therefore, whether it's self-improvement vis-a-vis self-acceptance, or the one Nanditha spoke about, open refer is certain, or stress management versus self-motivation. In all those cases, the underpinning or the underlying theme is excessive stress. Preference is normally, out of research, is something which we behave in typical patterns or syndromes as choices of behavior over time. Flip is something which happens under undue pressure and stress. So there is some correlation, though I'm not too sure whether I can say this is actually a parallel to what you're talking about in MBTI, though I'm familiar with MBTI, but not in the group situation. But there is some parallel. Thanks, Anna, for this question.
If I can add on, Anna, I think it's very useful you brought this up. And to me, and as Nanditha said, my experiences with Harrison are very recent. But from all the literature that I've read and all that I've got exposed to, this seems very similar. And the only thing I want to, however, mention here is usually flips are, reactions that don't last for very long. So you come back to your original behavior very soon. I'm not sure if it's in the grip is a similar thing or, it lasts for much longer. Nanditha, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're right, and I think that happens even with how long do we stay in that hyper stress state. But this also has, I think, in a way of sorts, correlation to aggressive, passive aggressive, all of that. So there are multiple things that can fold into this. And I know that this requires a longer thing, but there's enough on the internet for folks to look at, or if you would like to talk with any of us in a little more detail, I'm sure we'd be glad to help you with that.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
So with that, a big thank you to Nanditha as well as to Uday and Vijay. Nanditha, you have some fan following there in the chat box. And I think the quintessence is thanks, Nanditha. This has aroused my curiosity to explore Harrison assessment. So that's from Yatish. So job done. Thank you very much, Nanditha.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, folks.
Sure. Thanks, Nanditha. With this, we move on to Nasser in the interest of time. Nasser, over to you.
All right. So thank you very much. And first of all, it was a lovely presentation by Nanditha. It actually aroused a curiosity on me as well to try and understand this particular tool. So the tool that I'm going to share with you is a very simple, very easy to understand, and a very practical tool. So I just wanted to share my screen. Yeah, so a little bit of background. I wear multiple hats, and I run company. I started after brief work experience in a corporate selling space for some time, initially for about 3-4 years. This company that I'm running and heading for the last 23 years. So the initial part of our entrepreneurial journey, we try to pick up employees from different companies, or anybody comes our way. And during those interviews, these people are extremely good in terms of the way that they carry themselves, the way they answer. And this magic question that you ask, how do you see yourself 5 years from now? And immediately they'll say that I want to be sitting in your chair. So that's the very, very impressive kind of answer. So But after you recruit them and you see them for a couple of months, then that's the time that you really understand this particular person is not what he was saying that he can deliver. So we were actually trying to figure out, is there a possibility to do something to understand how do we really understand the behavioral pattern of these people, whether they are fit into that particular job, a particular role in a job, and all of that. So many assessment tools I've personally gone into it, attended to understand better. So everything was going above the head for me to really make it use and put it in the practical aspect of it. So I will be talking more in terms of very, very pragmatic, very practical aspect of it. And this is something that we've been using for the last 16 years in our organization, whether it is recruitment or to try and understand whether they wanted to put into a different job profile. And we also use this extensively in various organizations that we work as a client in terms of doing all of that, whether to do with recruitment or in terms of the compatibility or in terms of job switch or in terms of transitioning and all of that. So a quick introduction about the DISC. The DISC is what it is called as, and this is basically started by, in fact, created by a person called Dr. William Moulton Marston. Is considered to be the initial person who actually given some kind of an idea towards what this DISC is all about. And he is very famous because of the polygraph, which is called the lie detector. And he's also a person who's created this character called Wonder Woman, the cartoon character. And he had done this, and he has written a very interesting study on the name of emotions of normal people. So what is he trying to talk about is people generally illustrates the emotions through a behavioral type. So this is I'm sure some of you would have heard about this type versus trait, and this assessment is more to do with type, and it is very simply revolves around this 4 different type of behavioral pattern. Later on in the year 1956, there was this person called Walter Clark, an industrial psychologist. He is the one who actually put into the real perspective of DISC, and that's how the DISC started becoming popular. And what this gentleman is talking about is that every one of us actually exhibit all the different behavioral patterns. For some of us, some aspect of the type will be higher. For some of it will be lower. So that is the whole context that I wanted to set it before we get into it. So the DISC stands for, D stands for dominance, I stands for influencing or influence, and S stands for steadiness, and C stands for compliance. So a word of caution. Hello?
Nasser, just to point out, have you shared the presentation? Would you like to do that now?
Yeah, it is not showing?
No, it's not showing up.
Oh my God. Okay. I thought it's already on. Okay.
Thank you. It's coming.
Yeah. It's coming now? Yeah.
Yes, it's coming.
Sorry. Okay. So this is what I was talking about. 1928, Dr. William Marston. The D stands for dominance. I stands for influencing or influence, and S stands for steadiness, and C for compliance. A word of caution before I get on to this particular presentation. When we are trying to do this, it's just the beginning of a discussion and not the end of investigation. So what exactly I mean by that is, you cannot really typecast anybody because of whatever the assessment report is talking about. It's just a thought process in terms of what the directions of the discussion could be. So there is this organization called Thomas Profiling in 1981. This company in the UK has actually worked on this DISC as a source, the open source, and this organization is also kind of certified by the British Psychological Society or Association. And they kind of worked intensively, very extensively, very deep in terms of this study at the organizational context. So if you do a typical DISC, it will normally gives you a basic graph about you as a person, whereas Thomas Profile works on it, and Thomas Profile reports are generated in 3 different aspects. One is about the normal self. The second one graph is about at the work environment. And the third one is under the pressure. So this is a very intensive assessment that is done by Thomas Profile, and they call it as PPA, Personal Profile Analysis. And this can also be matched with the, if you have any of the job categories of different roles in an organization. So what they call it as human job analysis. So there's about 28 to 30 different questions, which will broadly classify the person's interest in different role category wise. And based on that HJA, and this can be mapped also online. So for typically like any other assessment, these are all based on units, so it does everything, and it gives you a compatibility level in terms of fit for that particular role. So DISC as such is a very open source, and different organizations work on it. There is also another organization called DISC Extended. They are the new organization which has done a lot of research, and they're trying to help organizations in a different context. So this is the first part of the presentation I'm doing. The second part, I'm going to talk about what are this different dimension is all about. And the third part that I want to talk about is how this is actually used in work environment, and more so to do with the coaching context. And what kind of experience that I have. Yeah, hello?
Sorry to interrupt, Nasir. I think slides are getting slightly truncated. Is the view is getting slightly truncated on the right-hand side.
No, okay, that is how it is. I've just taken the original report and just showed you to show that. Okay. So typically this is how the report looks like. So just wanted to indicate there's D and I, S, there's a graph in between a gray side. On the top, if a person's, this particular graph shows that this particular person is very high on C, and then S, and very low on D, and then I. So that's how the report is read. So just an indication is a real report for one of our clients. I just want to show some part of it. How does the graphic look like? So this is about the work scenario. The first one is about the normal self, and the third one is under pressure. So that's the theory part of it. I'm going to really get into the practical aspect of it. So let's say, for example, the whole assessment revolves around 4 different type of behavioral pattern. So let's talk about the dominance. I'll quickly run through the different dimension of all these things, and I'll give you a couple of examples so that it's very easy to understand. So a person with the D, that is a very high D, this particular person is driven, self-driven, motivated, and is very bold. He can talk anything and everything in front of anybody. And he's very direct. He's not very diplomatic, and is very decisive, very quick in terms of decision. He's always opinionated in terms of high ego. So he goes by that. And another dimension on this particular person is a person who's always like to win, and he wants to, wherever he goes, whatever challenges that he takes, he wants to be a winner. He would like to have a leadership position. So this particular person, wherever he goes, he looks for a lot of importance and is a natural leader by itself. So that's another interesting aspect of this particular person. This person wanted to be in charge. So if a very high D guy, if he works in a company, he's a leader, suddenly if you put him under somebody from the next day onwards, probably he will resign and go. So he would like to be in charge at every single time. He likes to be in control. So he doesn't want anybody else to ask him question. He's that kind of a super ego kind of a person. He's goal oriented, is result driven. So he likes to produce result. And he is a person who's an executor. He always gets things done, and he likes change continuously. He wants to change. He loves changes actually. So new challenges, new changes. So this is broadly about a person which is called D. The second person type of behavioral pattern is influence. So this person is very energetic. If you look at in any of the office, you see some person, the moment they come into the office in the morning, you see so much of sound happening, so much of energy. There's good morning around here and there, so much of energy this person brings in. So this person is driven by people around him. He always drives the energy from people around. He's a very outgoing person. Even if it is 1,000 people on a wedding, nobody knows this particular person. He will still go and say hello to few people here and there. So he's a very outgoing kind of a person. He always like fun. He's so much of excitement, so much of happiness. He's a very enthusiastic person in that sense. He's very positive. He always talks about positive. Anything that you give him, even with the biggest task, the first thing that he'll say is that, yes, it can be done. He's very talkative. He's over talkative in terms of the way that he expresses. There's a lot of action, a lot of animation. And if you allow him to talk, he'll keep on talking for hours together. What is this person actually looks for? He looks for recognition. So you will see these people wearing different kind of shirts, all those branded tags to show off. nice pen, nice cars. They go by, they would love to have some kind of recognition. Whoever sees them, they wanted to give them the recognition. He doesn't want to go in detail. This person is just on the surface. He trusts people. You want to go by it. He doesn't like going into very detailed analysis of it, anything for that matter. He always wanted to be the center of attraction. That's what I was sharing with you in terms of brands and all of that we are talking about. He doesn't want to get into uncomplicated things. He always wanted to be good kind of a thing. He doesn't want to go into anything which creates some kind of a problem, some kind of a rift between any of those things. If there is some kind of situation like this, he will actually coolly walk away from that kind of situation. He's basically a networker. So he's just an extrovert kind of person. He goes, mixes with people. He will always have a lot of people in the office. So even if it is a break, he wants to go out for tea, he will have 3-4 people around him. That's how this particular person is all about. The next person is, the next type of behavior is called as steadiness. And this is pretty nice in terms of a very good listener, very patient in terms of whatever they do. They always like to help people, and pretty much reserved. They don't unnecessarily go and talk, unlike the other I that I was talking about, or the D for that matter. They do their own way. They don't, if you speak to them, if you become very close to them, then they give their life for you. So they're very understandable. They try to get a detailed understanding of everything that they do. They're pretty stable. So they don't like to do anything new. So if you go and give them any change, any new change, time and time again, some kind of a change, they don't like to get into any change scenario. They want life to be safe, steady, stable kind of environment. So what is this other dimension to this particular person? They are very cautious. They don't want to get into change. If suppose if they wanted to buy a car, they will probably prefer a Maruti because it's pretty safe and tried and tested, proven. They're very pleasing. They're very friendly. They don't like to have any kind of a controversy, any issue between people. If there is any challenges between any fight between two people, they will go and help them to solve that. This particular person, the assertiveness part of it, it's a big no for them. They don't like to say no to anybody. They always wanted to please people. They give so much of importance to relationships. So this is what is all about the steadiness. And since they are more relationship oriented, they always like to help people around. The next thing is it's called compliance or conscientiousness. These are two different terms that this particular behavioral type is explained. So this particular person is very, very effective in terms of what they do. They're very, very thorough in terms of whatever they're trying to do. They're too much in terms of analytical stuff. So they're more logical oriented, and they always wanted to be perfect. So they go detailed. So instead of taking risk and doing it, they do thorough, meticulous plan, and then only they get into any kind of a work. They're pretty loyal, so you can depend on them, and they also produce extraordinary result. So what are the things that they bring into table? They always like to have a lot of knowledge. They're curious to know a lot more things. They analyze everything before they get into anything. You typically, when you go and meet these kind of people in their offices, their cabins will have a lot of chart papers, a lot of graphs, maybe a lot of Excel sheets here and there. And this particular person is always always an analytical mind. So they don't just like that trust people that easily. They go by facts, figures, and numbers and logics. They always like to take calculated decisions. They don't just take decisions just like that, and they are highly process driven. So these are all the various different type of aspect. I just wanted to give you a couple of examples out of these 4 people. Let's say, for example, these 4 people are going on an elevator. For example, you normally will see that when you go towards an elevator, there are a lot of people. You go towards an elevator, there are so many people are running behind, or people are crowding there. So a person with a high D, he'll just go. He'll not really bother about people coming there, running towards the elevator. He just presses the button, goes up, and that's it. He's not really bothered about anybody else. Whereas if you look at a person with I, so that particular person will go, stand there, and just because he's seeing somebody running towards the elevator, he'll wait, he'll make them come along with that, and say hello to them, and then get introduced to them, and then take them along with them on the elevator. The third person is the S person, and this particular person goes there. Either he decides by himself, or he just leave it to the elevator to go, because obviously there'll be a couple of other people be there, and they go by itself. The last person is a C person. This particular person will go near the elevator and he will start doing a lot of analytical stuff. He'll start calculating. The elevator is somewhere on the 25th floor and he has to go to the 3rd floor. He'll start calculating, looking at the watch, and he do all those numbers and then decide, why should I wait for so long? I might as well climb the stairs. So another example I wanted to give you, these 4 different people are going to a tea shop or a coffee shop. They wanted to order a coffee. So the first person will go with so much of confidence, say that, I want this particular tea. Whatever he wants, he will say that, this is the tea that I want. Maybe a black coffee, a Turkish coffee, whatever it is. The second person will go, the first thing that he'll start talking about is, hi, how are you? What is your name? How was your holidays? Where were you during the Onam or whatever? Because typically something like that they will ask. And then they'll start talking about the tea, and he will start asking everybody else in the group, what is the kind of tea that you want? What is the tea or coffee that you want, the other person wants, and things like that. The third person, pretty much they will go and ask, what is the most sellable tea here, or what is this particular restaurant is famous for, what is everybody does. So maybe that is one choice, or possibly somebody else will order for this particular person. The last person is the C guy. This guy, if he wants to go and order a coffee, how will he look at it? He will go start giving a lot of explanation towards, I want one coffee with a little bit of sugar, more thickness, and very hot. He'll give all kind of specification. So that is what the C kind of person will do. So this will probably give you a perspective towards what are these 4 type of people. Now I'm going to run you these different dimensions towards the work in different aspects and how this role fit into each one of it. And I'm also going to talk about how I use this particular tool in the coaching context. So the first and foremost is the D. I've given you a little brief in the introduction. So this particular person's top of the mind, he fears failure. A highly success-driven person, highly egoistic person, he doesn't want to fail. That is what is the number one fear that this particular person has got, is fear. What motivates this D, the person with very high dominancy in terms of behavioral pattern? So this guy's motivation is all about power and authority. You say them, okay, you are the leader, you can do it, we are looking forward to you, you are a very successful person. That motivates this particular person. This D, in terms of value to the organization, he is actually a bottom line driven person. So he always looks for result. You give this particular person task and he will ensure that he gets this done no matter what. In terms of the sales skill, I'm sure you know about sales. If you look at it, it's a lot of things. The sales process, it starts from saying greeting, that is the warming up, and then saying the opening, and then understanding the customer's requirement, presenting or tailoring a presentation, then handling objection, and then closing the sale. These are all different aspects of the sales aspect of it. And this particular person, the high D person, will be extremely good in terms of closing the sales. Typically, if you look at most of the sales people in the world, 90% of the sales people in the world have this problem of closing the deal. They'll do extremely good in terms of opening. They'll build relations. They will talk about their product so passionately. But when it comes to selling, closing, that's where the challenge happens. So this is a person which we are talking about is the D. The next aspect of this is what would be the management style of this D person? He will be starting giving a lot of direction. He do this, do that. That is his style. So when it comes to coaching as a context, if you look at it, like during the last panel discussion also, I was talking to you about how I use this tool on 3 different aspects. That is before the coaching assignment gets started, that is the chemistry session, during the coaching conversation, and finally the last part is in between the one coaching session, the next coaching session. So if you look at this particular dimension, if I know that this particular person's D is very high, I know this particular person means business because he is a result-oriented person. He doesn't need much of a motivation because he's already self-driven. And I also know that this particular person, in case if he doesn't like the coaching going in the right context, he'll automatically say on my face, saying that it is not going anywhere. And he's pretty much in terms of decision making. So if he wants to do something, and if he tells something in the particular session that he's going to do it, there are all possibilities that he will do. And obviously he wants to be in control. So we know that as in coaching, we always don't want to interfere anything to do with for our agenda. It is the coachee's agenda, and this particular person can definitely do. So on the chemistry session, I keep this in mind. And during the conversation also, see, a person with very high D does not like to have too lengthier question. He always liked to be very shorter one. So I'm going to leave you at the end of this particular presentation a shortcut to remember all these 4 people. I'm going to leave you with 8 different words so that you can easily understand as a shortcut method to know what works in all these 4 people and how do you identify these 4 different type of behavioral patterns. So this is what I do. So I'll be a little more mindful during the coaching conversation with this type of coachee based on that particular type. I know it's nothing to do with the coachee as such. It's more to do with the coach. I as a coach will orient myself towards, okay, what kind of question that will land well? What are the things that I need to be mindful? How can I really put it across? What are the ways if I go on a little other side, it will be too pushy, or it will be too, will I be rubbing him on the wrong side of the shoulder? So I will be a little more mindful about all these things during the coaching session. And in between the coaching session, between one and the second session, that's where the most important aspect of coaching assignment, where the particular person, whatever he or she commits, they have to execute it and come back and do it. So in that particular context also, this will give me a fair idea in terms of whether this particular person will be able to do it or not. So I'm going to run you through the second aspect of it. This is about the I, which is influence. What does this particular person fears? He fears rejection. So if a person comes with a brand new shirt with a nice pen on a pocket, a Mont Blanc, and if nobody notices this, that this particular person gets rejected, or he doesn't feel well. So he fears most is the rejection. What motivates him is the popularity, recognition, public praise. That's what he wanted to be, in the center of attraction. People wanted to compliment him for all the achievement he's done. That's what he likes. Value to the organization. He is a person who's definitely a people person. So you must have probably heard about this good cop, bad cop. So every organization, every department will have these kind of thing. And this particular person will perfectly fit into the role of a good cop. He'll be with people, he'll work with people, he will talk about all of that. And, there'll be a lot of energy around the organization. In terms of sales skill, he'll be extremely good in terms of opening doors. He'll be a brilliant guy to open conversation with anybody, breaking the ice, introducing about our companies. That will be a great aspect of it. In terms of management style, this particular person will be highly motivating. He will not just like that say, don't do this, I will not approve on this. Even if he wants to convince some people, he'll take a lot of time, and he doesn't want to hurt people. So that is the topmost agenda in his mind. So he always like to go slow and ensure that that particular other person is convinced in terms of doing whatever they want to do. This particular person, in terms of coaching context, is very energetic, very positive. He always talks about very positive aspect of it, and he's very talkative. So in a coaching conversation, you have about 40-45 minutes, so maximum. That will be very effective. So if you allow them to talk, they'll keep on talking about a lot of things. And, that's where, you need to bring it back to the context and objective setting and where we are, and especially the measure of the particular session, all of that. So you need to be a little mindful on that particular aspect also. He likes to be a lot of appreciative. So acknowledge what you're saying, and I appreciate your activity so far. These kind of stuff, which will probably land well with them. So this particular person will, again, probably he'll bring a lot of subject in such a way during the coaching conversation also. So, I'm finding very difficult in handling these people. I don't know how to say no to them. I cannot push them. So those are the things that you can probably expect. And that's what, in my experience, I've come across. So this is what will work well. Again, at the time of the chemistry session itself, I'll be able to understand what kind of a person this particular type of person is, and what are all the motivators, how we have to approach them. And during the questioning or coaching conversation also, I'll be mindful. And again, the very important aspect, especially to this particular person, because they are very positive, they'll keep on promising a lot of things. They may not execute a lot more things. So that is one aspect of it. The second aspect is the time management will be a real big challenge for this particular person. And most of the time they tend to forget, because their thought process doesn't go. They are not a meticulous planner in terms of writing it down and making all those assignments done. They don't do that. So you might have to probably push them a little bit to get things done. So the next behavioral type that I want to talk about is yes, this stands for steadiness. Meantime, Puneet, is there anything that I need to address, because I'm not seeing the chat box here?
No, Nasir, we are good. We're good. You will have 10 minutes at the end for question answer. You have at least another 5 to 6 minutes for the presentation.
No problem. Thank you. Okay. So the fear part of it, as far as the S is concerned, this particular person does not like change. If anything happens, this particular person will be very happy doing 365 days, same job, absolutely no problem. They'll keep on doing the same thing. Suddenly, when you change it, they don't like it. What motivates these people? Safe, secure kind of a job, safe, secure kind of environment, safe, secure kind of a job profile. That's what something which motivates them. A value to organization, if you just give them the process, this is what you need to do, they'll exactly implement the same thing without any deviation. No problem, how much ever time it is. You just give them, you have to explain to them completely about what needs to be done, and they will go about and implement it without any challenge at all. They'll do it exactly the way that you wanted to tell them. In terms of sales, these people will be extremely good in terms of handling customer service, post-sale services, because they don't get angry. They'll perfectly fit in terms of that particular profile. In terms of management style, they're pretty organized. So since they are pretty good in terms of implementing things and also following a particular process, they'll be extremely good in terms of what they are doing. Again, when it comes to coaching context, they're pretty stable. They fear change. They don't like to say no to people. They always love to help people, and they're very good listeners. So this also gives me an idea in terms of the coaching context on all the three aspects, right from the chemistry during the conversation and also to the action part of it. So this particular person, in my experience, I need to be a little more careful about this particular person, because they don't want to hurt people. They don't want to say no to people. And everything revolves around, most of the coaching conversation they bring in, they'll all revolve around somebody else, and they have to go change something. They want to take risk, but they don't want to take risk, and things of that sort. So this will also give you an idea about all these aspects of it in terms of asking the questions and what kind of a question, the framing of the question, and things of that sort. Then the last part of this is the C, which is called compliance. And this particular person always fears conflict, because he wants, in his mind, he always wants to be a perfectionist, and he doesn't want anybody to ask him question. So he always wanted to go and do the perfect stuff every single time. So he doesn't like to have any conflict. And this particular person, what motivates him is all about procedures, process, standard operating procedure. He just go by that. He'll not deviate anything. Value to the organization is quality standards. He just follows that, whether it is ISO, whatever it is. As a sales skill, this particular person will be extremely good in terms of all those contracts, documents, and service level agreement and all of that. So that will be is by nature they'll be extremely good in that. In terms of management style, they'll just go by the rule book. They just follow the rule. That will be the management style of this particular person. When it comes to coaching context, this particular person, as I said in the beginning, they love perfection. They are too much in terms of analysis. They're too logical, too process driven. So they all look at that particular perspective only. So you also have to be pretty clear in terms of the chemistry session, in terms of the number of sessions in each thing. What would be the objective? They'll be asking hundreds of questions related to that. What happened if one coaching session misses, and all kind of questions you can expect from this kind of people during the contracting side. The next thing is about during the coaching conversation also, there'll be many times when you're trying to, the coaching is all about exploring who. But if you get into by mistake on the transitional side, or they'll be getting into more of transactional aspect towards it, then you simply cannot control these people, because they go by the rule book. And so that is a word of caution. And finally, in terms of getting things done, these people will be pretty meticulous in terms of what they're doing, whether it is the wheel of life or any of the assessment that you're trying to give it to them. They'll be extremely good. And before they get into do that, they'll be asking you hundreds of questions to get the clarity done. Once the clarity is there, they'll go all out and implement it. So I just wanted to finally give you a shortcut to understand these things. How do you really look at a D as a person? I just want all of you to remember this particular thing called what. A D person will ask you, okay, what is that you want me to do? Don't tell me how to do it. So this is what a shortcut to remembering D. So if you give a particular person a job, he will ask you, okay, what is that you want me to do? Tell me. Don't tell me how to do it. He will get angry. I person will ask, who is there with me? Because he is driven by people around. So who is my team? He will be asking all this kind of question related to that. S person will say, how? Before you give any work to that particular person, is more of a implementation-oriented person. So you need to educate him in terms of exactly what needs to be done. So he wants the answer for the question how. Without the how question answer, he will not start any particular work, he or she. And finally, C, this particular, as I told you, is a very logical oriented person. So before even starting any work, he wanted to understand why is he doing what is he doing. So he will not start the work unless until he gets the why part of it. The next 4 words again I wanted to give you is that the D is always power, authority, domination, and that's what this D is all about. The I person is always a people-driven person, so that's a shortcut for this particular behavioral type to remember. And then this particular person, S is all about pace. You need to give them their own time span so that they will start working towards whatever they want to do. And C is all about policy. So these are the shortcut 8 words that I told you that I will be talking about and giving you the clue so that you can start following it up. With that being said, I kind of done with the formal presentation, and over to Puneet for any questions in case if they have it in the chat box.
That was very lucid and wonderful, very practical, very pragmatic, and very easy to remember, Nasser. Thank you very much for that presentation. A lot of appreciation out there in the chat box. Now we have time for a few questions, at least about 5 to 7 minutes. You could unmute yourself and ask questions, please, if there are any questions. So in the meantime, Nasser, I would be curious to ask that, over time we had Harrison where we saw a trait-based approach, and in this we are seeing a very type-based approach to kind of looking at behaviors and people. Now it is very as a coach, the ideal thing would be for me to see the unique brilliance of an individual. So every individual is very uniquely created, and it's for them to discover their uniqueness. Now, how does the type-based tool like this do justice to that? And how can a coach be careful about when you are slotting people into types?
Okay, see, in my experience, before I do any coaching assignment, I start with this assessment. I mean, first I'll talk to them on a very casual. I don't do any assessment in terms of giving them instrument and all that. So over a period of 16, 17 years, I'm practicing now. So it's become a part of my practice itself. So if I have to go to an office or speak to somebody for the first time, by the way that they ask the question, by all those office environment, the displays of trophies, the cards, by all of that, I could probably look at some kind of an understanding, whether he or she, I'll be able to really understand what type of particular person would be. So based on that, I'll be asking them some question. So the same thing applies. It's just a natural extension for me in terms of coaching. So I've been doing this for the last 16, 17 years, and it worked brilliantly for me, and I've used it multiple times. And it really worked well also, whether it is to do with the recruitment decision or to give them some very challenging assignment or sending them to a different country for a new assignment. All that I've really worked out it, and it worked brilliantly well. And post 2012, that I've been associated with BNI from 2012, BNI just goes by this disc, whether it is recruiting a franchisee, recruiting a director team, recruiting a leader. So my belief system in this entire philosophy has become even more stronger because they just follow, but they follow the disc of Tony Robbins. Because Tony Robbins has also got a similar kind of stuff, which is very open source. You can just go Google and ask for Tony Robbins disc. He will give you a link, and then it gives you entire report. Earlier it was very in-depth, but now they made it a little more shorter. So it is open source. No, you don't have to pay anything as well. So such a big organization with 35 years of research, and they are following it. And I thought there must be some reason behind it. So my conviction became even more stronger. So the point is, on a chemistry session, I don't use the administrative aspect as said, but then I will be asking them few questions. So that will give me an understanding about what type of person they are. And that's what I told you in the beginning itself. It's an open tool for discussion, not for doing any investigation and conclude certain part of it. So it will give you an idea. So it will be better to understand that particular person. And DISC is also used brilliantly in terms of a powerful communication tool. For example, as I told you, DISC exists in all of us. There's only the variance in terms of what is high, what is low, but each one of us. So if I know another person who's also a D, for example, I'm an employee, my boss is a very high D person, okay? If I have to go and ask for 2 weeks holiday or leave, what do you think I need to do? I know exactly what the other person will think. The first thing that he will ask me is, have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done X number of assignments that is already given to me? So I will go to his cabin. I'll start telling about all the other things. And I'll also start telling about what is his expectation of the other few things. And then I will ask him, sir, I'm on a off for about next 2 weeks. I'll definitely ensure that I will give you this result. There ends the matter. So it's a very powerful tool in terms of even understanding the other person. And you have to adapt according to the other person. It's not nothing to do with the other person as such. So it's been working very well. And as all the coaches, all of us part of the ICF, we've been trained not to push our agenda at any point of time. And that's what all this practicing is done. So that's the thin line which you need to be very cautious about it. And if you're not very sure about that particular thin line, then don't get into this psychometric itself on the coaching, whatever tool that you're using. That's my take, in my humble opinion.
Lovely, Nasir. It was beautiful. I think you have really motivated me to know more about this and Thomas profiling, as well as Nanditha has really triggered. I would like to definitely take up Harrison. So couple of questions, I guess, in the chat box. Nasir, does it lead to any prejudging? Rajesh asks. Rajesh, you could unmute yourself in case you want to explain that.
Yeah. Hi, Nasir. So first of all, thanks for this very lucid and explanation of DISC. I mean, we've used DISC in the past, but never ever I had such deep insights into DISC. So thank you very much. So what I was saying is when you use it in a coaching context and you get it done beforehand, before you start working with a coachee, does it sort of lead to some kind of a prejudgment on your part as a coach? Because now you know that this guy is either a D or an I or an S or a C, and it's not an open slate, so as to say. So you already know where you're working from, and is this really conducive to coaching?
Okay, see now what I have done in my practical approach to many of the entrepreneurs that I work with in India and in Middle East. So I tell them about this as a tool, and I talk to them about all the other stuff. It will be very useful. And when I have the confidence and when they trust me, and when I build the confidence initially, and that's where I maybe about 3 months, 6 months down the line, the relationship. That's why I typically make them either go online and use the units of Thomas Profile, which is a paid version, or a free version, whichever way. So then I will just look at the graph and I'll ask them a lot of questions about them. Then they'll say, whatever you are, what have you done a horoscope or what? You've been telling me about everything about me. So clear, so practical. So they get excited about the whole thing, you know. It's rightfully so. Anybody talks about it, whether the face reader or palm reading or anybody, you get excited about, you know, how do you know all this about me? Then I say, no, it has nothing to do with me. I'm not into horoscope. I don't know anything about numerology, all of that. But I'm just saying this is a scientific tool and this is applicable anywhere else. So that is how I break the ice, number one. Number two, see, in a coaching conversation, what is the objective of a coaching assignment? A person is in one particular stage and that particular person has to go to the next stage and you need to be successful, no matter whatever they bring into they are coming to you, and you need to leave them in a very highly resourceful stage, right? And after the assignment of 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, or whatever, if you can give them an indication about, you know, you are a person, you're not able to do something like this, that's your challenge. So today morning, I was having a conversation with a client in Qatar for about 3 hours because they were trying to put one particular person who does not have a leadership quality at all as a sales leader for one particular division. It's got about 25 people in different nationalities. As a person is gem of a guy, no doubt about it. But as a sales leader, he may not fit into that role. So what we are trying, see, most of the coaching conversation that I have, when I'm in a coaching conversation, 45 minutes, I'm a hardcore coach. But after the coaching gets over, now that I'll tell them, okay, now that the coaching is over, you're agreed me, you're going to do this assignment, you're going to take this is what you're going to do, and you're answerable, you're accountable for that particular activity. But beyond the coaching conversation, it's a friendly conversation on a dinner. He will ask you, so Nazir, this is the problem that he'll be talking a lot of personal things, he or she, and talks about a lot of things, a lot of challenges. They also wanted to talk about some of the corporate assignments they have done. Some of the women leaders, they came within the first session itself. It's a corporate company paid assignment. And in the very first session, that this lady comes and tells, I don't like this job, I want to leave this. So it's not paid by that particular coachee, it's paid by the company. So, okay, so there are situations where people will come and share with you, and that's when you start asking about with this particular tool in mind, and so that you will be giving them on that particular aspect. So again, I'm going to tell you, this is the line that you need to draw yourself, and you need to be absolutely disciplined on that particular aspect. You should be very cautious. In the coaching context is different, outside coaching context is different. So if you don't balance that, then it will be a very difficult task.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Nasser, and thanks, Nanditha. On that note, I'll hand over quickly to Vijay for a word of thanks.
Thank you. Vote of thanks is usually the hardest bit. So I'm not going to call it vote of thanks. Just want to say I really enjoyed this session. And, and I must first talk about Nanditha's session. And yes, Nanditha just said I've freshly been, minted out in terms of Harrison. But yet it was lovely, Nanditha, the way you brought it all together. And in such a short duration of time, that too. I know it's a big ocean out there. It was fantastic. And we could see that by the kind of comments that came in the chat box. Nasser, of course, not new to this series, and we've heard him before. But today, what I really liked, Nasser, was, of course, as somebody said in the chat box, good refresher of DISC. And I think the kind of practical insights that you brought in and did a lot of justice to this, because this is a practitioner's series, right? It's not a theoretical series, it's a practitioner series, and it is for coaches, right? It is for that audience. So thank you, Nasser, some great clues and insights there. And putting both of it together, we did promise you a 3-part series, which became a 4-part series, because our group which put this together has really been working hard behind the scenes, all of them. And so we do have one more part, the announcement for which will come out later tonight. So please do join that on September 30th. And I think with that, we would have done enough and more justice to the world of psychometrics from a coaching lens. Truly always grateful to the community, because as I said earlier, this is one webinar that got floated, sourced from the community. The need came from the community, the presenters came, everybody got together. And I can talk for the team that put it together. They've had a blast behind the scenes, co-creating and bringing this all to you. With that, yeah, that's my little vote of thanks. So big thumbs up and 3 cheers to both of you. And eagerly awaiting the next one, where Puneet, Prasad, and Uday will bring out another fantastic webinar, I'm sure.